Good evening, guys, and welcome to Pause Build. So today I'm going to be building a werewolf den timberwolf habitat in Planet Zoo. So what I'm doing right now is trying to create the first shape of the habitat, which is going to form the main area of where the wolves are going to eat and sleep. So I've done this just by making a circle with the parting tool and set on 2 meters, and now I'm going to try and fill it with barriers. This is actually a mistake, but you'll see I change a little bit of this later on because I realised I sealed off the habitat already by linking the barriers the whole way. If you do want to create 2 shapes on top of each other like I'm going to, you want to make sure you don't complete the shapes, otherwise it just doesn't work. So I've done the first shape there, and I'm building the second shape now, which is a like half moon, crescent moon. So the first one I was going for full moon and then a crescent moon next to it. Trying to get that werewolf vibe in the habitat. And here's where I made the second shape. So as you can see, there are already 2 different habitats, which I should have linked together, but oh well, I change it later and it doesn't take too long. So there you go, that's the shape I was going for. You can kind of see now. And then I thought, well, obviously we need to link them, so I was going to build a path over the top, which actually turns out okay. It wasn't that hard, just using the terrain tools and the flatten tool, which is a godsend to create a ramp or a hill over the top, which also creates a nice spooky tunnel for guests to walk through if they're crossing between. My original plan was to kind of have some kind of glass so they could see through, but this was just impractical given the size of the hill, and it's more of a mountain really, and how the wolves have to go over it and everything. It was just going to be a massive pain, so I didn't. It's just a nice spooky tunnel, which I just evened out a little bit there. So there we go. Had to smooth it out obviously so the wolves could get over, which I'll be testing later to check that they can. And what I'm doing now is building a lake. I wanted to kind of leave that section in the middle so it could be a little area which the wolves would probably use preferentially because it's the closest to the food, but they can drink from there. And that'll be an area where guests view, as you can see. So just put the glass on the areas where I want guests to view the wolves. And here's what I thought would work when linking habitats, but it does not. It's just 2 habitats. So I'll change that later. Here you can see I'm making the food structure. So I was going for like a bone look, which meant I had to try and play around with the colors until I had something that looked like bone, or like, you know, with meat on it still, or blood. So I kind of got this effect with the grey, white and red, and I'm trying to make a rib cage out of it, like a giant rib cage, which would be the kind of focal point for the feeding area. And I think this went quite well. These aquatic faux rocks are so useful. You can make so many different things out of them. It's incredible. It's such a good add to the game. And here's one of the weirdest things that happened. I was trying to put these scent sacks in, and my plan was to have them in the wall so that you couldn't really see them, covering up the bottom bit later, but it doesn't quite work. It's a bit weird, as you'll see later. Here I'm trying to make some meat to go with the bones, just using the rocks, and I found that actually the black was quite good. It makes it look quite realistic or gory, so I began just placing them all around, trying to cover it to make it look like a carcass, because we're going for that horror theme, and put some blood scent markers in there as well for enrichment. But I thought they looked a bit weird just on their own because they're quite small as well, so I just covered them with the rocks. And there you go, that was my plan of covering the scent sacks. But as you'll see later, it's quite a weird bug, I guess, I found. If you cover the pole and it can't hang down properly, it has some issues. So I'm just putting in some more rocks. I didn't use many of these third ones because they're not quite as meaty, but I thought I'd put a few in just to bulk it out and add some difference. Just piling on the last of the meat now, I believe. And I thought it looked quite good, so I was having a look at it at night, and I realised it's really dark, so it's going to need some lighting. So I was going to try and create some ambience here, and I thought maybe I could use the fire from the Arctic pack. These, I don't know what they're called, torches, but I just didn't like the look of it. It looked too man-made almost, so I was trying to go for some more ambience rather than man-made light in there, which obviously required power. so I put a transformer in. But I didn't like these baubles either, they just looked a bit odd. So I had to try a few things here. So then I went for, spotlight, and wasn't a fan of the spotlight. I also realised I put these torches in the group, so I took these out later as well. But here we go, I think this is second to last. I tried these panels, which I thought were quite cool, but they just didn't really generate enough light. And then I found the pathing light from the New World pack, or decorations. And I thought this gave a good amount of light, as you'll see there. So I put these in and just changed the colour, which I do now. And once it had this red effect, I thought it added a good level of light. It's still quite dark, it doesn't look too artificial, but I thought it looked good. So then I just took them out so they were all the same and used one to copy, so everything was symmetrical. And trying to place them inside the bones so you can't really see the actual light themselves, because I thought that kind of ruined the effect. But yeah, I thought it turned out quite cool. And putting them at the side as well to light up the areas that primarily just the meat sacks, really. And they also created a bit of an effect on the grass, so I had to make it short grass with the long grass. But I changed all of the terrain later as far as the texture and everything, so the walls will be happy. So here we go, moved on from the food now, building the bed area, which is using the same effect. I was trying to get one of those bones it's got the bits that join it in between. I can't even think of a good way to describe it. It has the like almost sheets of bone in between, and then kind of sticks that come out the bottom. And there weren't really any good sticks for the bottom, so I just went with the same ones I've been using earlier for the middle bit of the rib cage, and I'm just putting these in. I also decide to break some of these up later so it doesn't look quite so perfect on everything. It's not full rib cages. And this is what I was meaning by joint together. Hopefully you can see that. And obviously going up all the way over the top. So it's just a matter of angling them and placing them properly, which creates a roof for the timber wolves, so they have some good hard shelter, which is obviously one of their requirements. Because I wanted it to be a cool build, but I also want it to be something that the wolves can actually live in happily, and not going to have any protesters or anything coming to the zoo. Oh, here we go. This is where I start to break everything up. I actually put another bone in here just because I thought bones are quite, they could be deformed maybe on this one. Got a bit of a bone sticking out the top. Yeah, which I thought that looked pretty good. Just taking apart bits and then putting some of the broken bones on the floor. Just around, creating kind of that like bone graveyard look. And some of these smaller ones as well, just as pieces. Just angling them so they look a bit different. And yeah, I thought this was quite good. So over here we've obviously got the food and the shelter almost complete now. I think I had to add the bedding to make it functional for the wolves, so they can actually sleep here. And I went a bit crazy because I just thought they could sleep anywhere around here really. They don't have to sleep under the shelter if they don't want to. They can sleep in the open. I'm not going to judge. And here we go. So I removed the torches from the food bit, from the food group, because I accidentally added them in earlier. And I do put them back later, but as their own group. And I was doing the same again here with the light. So I used the same light as I did in the food, but just making it, I just did it on one side on this one, I believe, because I didn't want it to be too much, because it's also where they sleep, so I don't want it to be too light either. And placing it inside the rock. Yeah, here's where I decided to just do one. Had a look at it and decided no, I just want it on one side, and the same on the other, I did it on the other side. So we just got a bit of lighting in there for the guests to see the animals, but it's not too much that the wolves couldn't sleep in it without having some bright red light in their face. Having a little bit of trouble with this one. And finally got it, good position, and placed them all in. So there you go. I debated adding some floor lighting, but I'm not sure I did in the end. Or if I did, I only did very few. No, I just added very few. And now I was trying to go for ambiance, so I was trying to get that like thick fog effect, which I tried with smoke at first and it was not good. So I went with this like mist effect, which I think is really good. Actually, I really like the effect. And just putting some of this in so it looks a bit spooky. And here you go, now you can see what I was meaning about the sacs. They tend to just flail around if they can't fall down properly. It looks really funny. Like so it was just a matter of moving the rocks back and then repositioning the scent sacs into a position they were happy with. Which annoyingly you can see some of the pole, but I tried to push them back a little bit so they're not fully on view. At least that one I did. The second one. So they're not too in view. And you know, it's a real life zoo. People aren't expecting that nothing man-made is going to be there. I mean, the whole ribcage is obviously man-made anyway. And just adding some mist in here as well. I went a bit heavy on the mist and then I took it back a little bit there. And now I'm just adding a bit more to the foreground. So that when the guests are close to the glass, it's still near them as well. And now came to the part of the build where I put in the trees. And this is a bit crazy, the amount of trees I put in. Oh, I'm just adding some staff facilities as well in here. Obviously reminded myself by putting trees down that I need facilities. So I've got the water pump working. And put in, I think just, yeah, trade center and keeper hut. Because I think that's all you need. I put in a staff room later as well. But that's all you need to have a functional habitat. I think later on in the builds, in the series, I'll add some more stuff and do it properly as far as the staff facilities. But just for now, I thought we'd just get the bare essentials in. And here's where I'm trying to fix the barrier situation to make it all one. And it's actually not a difficult fix. It just required me linking them into one habitat and putting a guest gate to walk through. So the tunnel can still be used, thankfully. And I'm having a little bit of a hassle with the barriers there, but sort it all out. Annoyingly, the path kind of goes in and it doesn't look very good on that side, but I thought, you know, it's not the end of the world. And thankfully the wolves can't get in the tunnel because that would be bad. And here's, I think, where I started to use the actual terrain tool to make to paint the terrain so it's something that the wolves are happy with. Because as I said before, I want the wolves to be able to live here happily. I don't want them to just be an aesthetic build that has no practicality. So this is actually a build that you could use in your zoo, although it's ridiculously expensive to build all this stuff, as you'll see when I start placing trees now. So with the trees, I went a bit crazy. I put a lot in. I had to just copy and paste a lot of them because there were just going to be so many trees. Because I wanted that thick like forest vibe to come in. So I started, obviously you only use trees from the tundra and taiga environments because they're the ones that the wolves would actually be happy with. I did check that the wolves were happy with all the trees put in as well. But all of this I take out in a minute, so don't get too attached to any of these trees because I just didn't like the look of it when it was done. So after very shortly you'll see I'll just take all this out after I put it all in a group and then have a look at it. Because when I was looking at it, I just decided it looked there was too much going on. There's too many light colours, there's too many colours, too many types of trees. It wasn't looking spooky enough for me, and the whole point was to have a spooky wood. So I was like, no, it's too nice. I'm gonna find some scary trees. So I made this a second version, which is I think a lot scarier. And I still wanted to keep in the red cedar trees. I love them. They're so beautiful as the artwork on them. But they're also really good at, like, they're really tall. So it's really good to get that kind of like looming tree, which makes the guests feel really small. These are the ones I'm talking about, which I'm putting in now. They're just huge. So they're probably my favourite tree after this build. But yeah, I'm just adding some flowers as well, because you don't just want trees. You want to make it look realistic if you can. And I think this is kind of going quite well at this point. I think the wood looks quite good when it's got all this stuff in it, so I was quite happy with that. And now it's just a matter of putting it all in one group so I can easily copy and paste and turn all these trees around, because I did not want to place all of these individually. You'll see later on just the ridiculous amounts of trees that are actually in this build. Not very practical in real life. One issue I also had when doing this was I didn't realise that some of these are placed at the wrong height because I've built them on a hill and then I've copied them elsewhere. So it's something to be aware of if you're doing the same or something similar, is you might have to reposition the trees, which doesn't look too bad if there's already trees in front of them, but like the ones in front of the lake there, you really need to move them so that the guests can't just see a floating tree. If there's a thick line of trees, you really can't tell whether they're on the ground or not. But yeah, I had to do some repositioning there. I also wanted to leave that clearing, which I was talking about earlier, open if possible. So I moved some of the trees away from there, because I want it to be an area that's kind of like a focal point from that side of the habitat. So when the guests view, they see the lake, and then there's like this little area there, yeah, which is open, which the wolves will probably be on, drinking or whatever, before they go back to bed or food on the other side. And adding some broken trees because I think they look spooky and it fits with the theme. And then yeah, I'll have a look at it at night. I thought it looked pretty good. And here's the thing which I really wanted to do, was add a spotlight on the area that I'm talking about, the clearing, to kind of look like the moonlight. And this unfortunately needed power, so I need to put a transformer. But I figured, oh well, it'll be alright because I'll put viewing boards in later and they'll all use the same power. But actually I have to move them, so this whole transformer is used just for the spotlight, which is not very practical, definitely not environmentally friendly. But, you know, the aesthetics have to come first. You gotta do what you gotta do. And in this case, we really needed some moonlight. I had a bit of a hassle pacing that as well. There we go. Nope, not quite in position. I realised it was actually easier to move it separately from the tree. So just putting the tree somewhere else and then putting the spotlight in the position I wanted and then putting the tree back over it. And I was quite happy with that. So put the spotlight in the tree, I think it looks quite good. I also thought this was way too bright, the spotlight, so I had to change the colour. So I went with like a nice light blue in the end. And I think that looks good. Looks like moonlight to me. So at this point, I think we probably need some wolves in here. So I believe I got 4 at first. I think I had 8 in the end. Already had some in there already, so I think this takes it to 8. Which is probably where I wanted to leave it. And I moved on to do things like the little housekeeping-y bits like viewing boards and donation boxes. So for the viewing board, I didn't just want to put the standard sign in, obviously. I wanted to make something a bit different. So I just used one of the rocks, and the aquatic rocks, and tried to make it look like bone like the other ones did. To try and keep it in the theme as well. Everything looks quite good. Had a bit of a struggle getting the board onto the rock, as you saw there, but it wasn't too bad. I got there in the end. And just placing all these boards in on both sides. And this is where I had the issue with power, because obviously all of these need power, and I needed another transformer. So 3 transformers for 1 habitat, but I'm hoping that I can use these or have like a multi-purpose for the next habitat we do. So it won't just be a ridiculous amount of power required for this zoo. And I started to try and hide this, but then I think I just gave up and moved on. Yeah. And to donation boxes. I just wanted them to be black, just to kind of fit with the horror theme. I might do that for all of the builds, I'm not really sure. But I quite liked it. And this is where I decided to place all the trees. So what I wanted to do, and this is actually it's really helpful for all your builds, or most builds that you do, is surround the habitat with trees. Because it just adds a really good amount of depth to the habitat. And obviously in a forest environment, you need to have a lot of trees anyway, so it really fits with this habitat. But yeah, it was just a matter of copying a lot of trees in different combinations, spinning them around so they all look completely different, and placing them. And getting rid of some of these other trees that were already there from the temperate environment, because I didn't really want them. I just wanted our spooky trees. And I had to hide that transformer as well because it's so ugly. What you'll see probably when I'm placing all these trees as well is the occasional Christmas tree just pops in. There we go, like that one. The occasional Christmas tree just pops in to say hello. And this is where I realised that I placed quite a lot of them at the wrong height. And it's not too much of a big deal when you've, like I was saying before, if there's already trees in front of them, you can't really tell. But seeing as these were going to be at the back or at the front in this case, because it's not that deep, I didn't want the next habitat to look stupid because you could see floating trees in the background from this habitat. So I just decided to suck it up and replace some of them. But yeah, by the end, there was a ridiculous amount of trees. And now I had to do lighting. So I really like these torch ones that you can do with a fire effect. So I placed a lot of these in there. Just trying to cover the path, following it round, make sure that everyone can see. Health and safety comes first, and I just really love the effect that they give. It's such good like ambiance. And that last torch was being funny, so I had to move it a bit. And here's where I realised that the guest facilities were causing a lot of negative, had a lot of negative impact on the guests. So I tried to cover it up just by adding a bit of scenery to them to try and reduce the impact, but it wasn't really working, and I didn't want to build a whole like house or something outside of the habitat. So I just moved them so they were not affecting the path essentially. And I do neaten this up earlier because some of the paths there didn't connect, but I connect this later. I didn't put this in the video because I didn't think it was that interesting. And there we go. So I had one, it just wouldn't link with that last viewing board, which means that this transformer is only being used for that one spotlight. So this is the final thing I did. I wanted to get some food enrichment in there because I didn't have any food enrichment, and I thought it would look really cool on the broken tree, but I didn't want it just halfway in the habitat. I wanted people to be able to see it, so I moved that tree to the front. And that's the end of the build. I'll let you enjoy the nice scenery.